What is resistance? Resistance seen in Nazi Germany were people who carried out operations of sabotage, participated in work strikes, raids on offices, destroying money, documents, and more, temporary liberation of towns/cities, uprisings in large areas, espionage, illegal pro-Jewish propaganda, forgery of documents, and partisans from prisoners of war. How were these operations of resistance executed? The resistance were all mostly connected by the underground. Most information about their plans were distributed through the many underground newspapers. However, some more advanced underground operations had and used radios, which provided quite useful as they were almost entirely untraceable. The last form was by speech, but it was quite difficult to achieve due to very strict Nazi policies and the chance of someone eavesdropping. The Nazis used a lot of propaganda to help aid the problem of the resistance fighters, offering the satisfaction in serving the country for the greater good. Many posters were used and very minimal resistance fighters were caught. The Nazis tried to kill resistance fighters in quiet, undisclosed locations to stop them becoming martyrs. They did not want the resistance fighters to inspire others to take up resistance against the Nazis. Martyrdom would have been a great way to inspire others to follow in your footsteps. Nazis' primary counter to the resistance was the Gestapo, which was a secret police force ordered by Hitler to hunt down those who opposed Hitler and those Hitler demanded to be put in the concentration camps. Throughout the war, Hitler decided to put the Gestapo in occupied territory to help down the resistance fighters. However, they weren't the most successful as they couldn't be everywhere, the lack of technology compared to today. There were many famous resistance fighters throughout the times, and they mostly rose up through France or Poland as they had the largest land and population in Nazi-occupied territory. There were many women resistance fighters, as the Nazis did not suspect women at the time to be resistance fighters, as it wasn't their traditional role to go out and do dangerous life-threatening activities. Barbara Loras was a propaganda writer who wrote a poster which was posted to the headquarters in Italy, which convinced 600 soldiers to cease fighting. She also helped in running fake documentary forgery businesses. She wrote letters that demoralized Germans/Italian soldiers, telling them that their wives and daughters were off with other soldiers, which convinced them to stop fighting. Another famous resistance fighter by the name of Nancy Wake was a famous French resistance fighter, as she led many Maquis groups. During 1942, when the Gestapo gained access to many files of the resistance due to someone selling them out early that year, they learned what Nancy was doing and placed a 5 million franc reward on her head, which is roughly $1.2 million in AU today. During her escape to England, she was caught and arrested. However, a high official claimed that they had the wrong woman and that she was his mistress. But in fact, she was not his mistress, but he was also a resistance fighter, which they were unaware about. She returned to the back lines in 1944, where she participated in the destruction of Nazi equipment, infrastructure, etc. One of her Maquis groups managed to take out 1.4k Germans while only sustaining a rough 100 themselves. She used the strategy of a few beers and flirtation to help her get around the areas, which provided very effective. Partisans from the Kingdom of Yugoslavia proved quite inefficient until the demise of Nazi Germany. The partisans grew by about 10 times, from 81k in 1941 to around 800k in 1944. The partisans saw many uprisings and were mostly communist-led due to the instability of the Yugoslavian government, which capitulated in about 11 days. However, the army with minimal supplies still attempted to withstand. The role of the partisans was to delay the German advancement and destroy resupplies and wait for their own resupplies by the Allied reinforcements. Many Yugoslav partisans died, either in cold blood during combat or sent to concentration camps due to the partisan strength. Soviet partisans were very effective due to the Soviets' large population. Propaganda was spread out in order to gain more traction, as the partisans were effective as they disrupted the German advancement of the Blitzkrieg by either destroying the infrastructure or disrupting or destroying resupply missions. Many Jews were included in the partisans, as the Jews were the most oppressed at the time, with over 10% of partisans being Jews. In 1943, there were almost 550,000 Soviet partisans, and the partisans self-proclaimed that alone they killed, captured, and injured over 500,000 German soldiers and civilians.